comma, John, and he knows full well that's just a trust. And he says, are you John Doe? I don't know. And you say, yeah. Okay, you must be. Are you Coca-Cola? Are you Nike or IBM? You are the only one that can say who you are. And that's something that we know law chases back to the scripture, and in somewhere in there they ask Jesus, you say you're the Son of Man? And I'm totally just winging this. I don't know what the quote is exactly. Son of God? That's what I meant. Son of God? And he said, you said it, not me.
Right.
So and what he's saying is that I don't have the burden to prove what you say. You're saying it, right? If you say it's snowing, where's the burden for me to prove that it is? If you say I'm this, where's the burden of proof to say that that's me? And so if the judge is to say, well, no, I'm here as that. I'm here as Coca-Cola, right? When an attorney goes in for Coca-Cola, he doesn't say, I am Coca-Cola, I'm tall and refreshing. You know,
Suck me up.
He says, no, I'm here for them. I'm here as Coca-Cola. So
a simple word as.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And so, no, I'm just here making a special appearance as Doe, John, to help the party solve the problem. So I don't give you jurisdiction over me. You just have jurisdiction over this fiction out here, this piece of paper. But I'll help you solve it. You know, but it's also back to making a legal determination. He meant this, and you thought perhaps that he meant you. And so when you go along with it, okay, off we go.
They're happy to let you make that legal determination.
Yeah. I looked up legal determination in Black's Law 8th dictionary on digital format, and you can do that Control F and then find. And so I typed in legal determination, and I wasn't just looking for a main entry, but anywhere where it might be used in context for something else. And in 5,400 pages, I only found it in one place. It doesn't explain it. It doesn't give a definition of what legal determination is, because that's a pretty powerful concept to understand that making what it is to make a legal determination, because then that begs all kinds of questions. Well, yeah, what is it that you mean by that? And once you kind of get outside the habit of just...
How could there be a system then?
What do you mean?
If it's not defined, legal determination, how could there even be a system?
Well, that's getting a little too deep into word meaning, but hold on a sec. The only place I found where making legal determination exists is under a definition of judge, and it says a judge has the authority to make a legal determination. Yeah.
I wonder if some of the earlier versions of Black's
I'm sure
earlier versions probably have more, because
the
later versions are a little more sanitized.
Yeah. And I think you almost have to read between the lines and look up determination, and then legal, and just study the words and find it yourself, because legal determination put together and then redefined would be so powerful. I couldn't find it in Bouvier's 1856 either. Maybe it's there and I didn't look, but I remember looking, okay, let's just see what the standard is for that definition. Couldn't find it. But it might be in Black's first or Bouvier's or Bouvier. But yeah, the only place I could find it is that a judge has the authority to do that. In other words, he is vested with the power and authority. If he says all rise and you do, you gave him permission to make legal determinations. And so when you say, I was driving, stop the conversation and slide over into his mind, you gave him permission to decide that you were conducting commerce. And that's okay. And you can't, and that latches. You can't go back later and say, no, you don't have the right to do that. Yeah, you do. Yeah, he does. And he does. No question about it. But if you stop and say, hold it, are you making a legal determination? And you didn't give categorical jurisdiction. Now all of a sudden making legal determinations is powerful. Let's find out about the difference between the tree and the shadow. What is it that you mean by that? What picture are you trying to paint? Because I think it means this over here. By driving, so hey, how fast were you driving? Well, I was going down the road 42 miles an hour, but what do you mean about driving? Is that commerce, or what's the full definition, and where do you get it? Let me see this driving business. I Otherwise, I don't know how to answer your question. Because if I said, hey, were you clapping this morning? Right? How fast were you clapping this morning? I mean, were you going over 20? You're going... Now, do you see what I mean? If I use an absolutely ridiculous word, you're not going to go, oh, yeah, I was doing... No, it's probably 32. Obviously, in your mind, you're going to go, what? I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
Forget the velocity. What's this nonsense? And so if you skip over... And so that's why they like that... you just gloss right over that familiarity of a word.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look it up and it has many entries to a definition that aren't all exactly the same,
Mm-hmm.
you have to hold it. Which one of these?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you look in a dictionary, and I don't know of a single word that only has one entry.
Mm-hmm.
And so look at every single word that has so many possibilities of confusion and ambiguity
Mm-hmm.
that we're just going through sentences like crazy, just assuming
Mm-hmm.
this is what he means by that. And yeah, you can get a lot of it by the context of the words before and after, but not purely. If someone wants to hide a meaning in their mind to trick you,
Mm-hmm.
contracts, man, that's where it lives, is to hide meanings in contracts. So, anyway, all this, I guess, feeds into the 1, 2, 3 due process.
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately, just because you send something out doesn't mean it's not going to come back. And then at the micro level, when you're dealing with someone viva voce, by the living voice,
Mm-hmm.
and they're using words, you need to be able to either ask those questions, or you need to be able to say, hold it, Judge, this is, I asked you this once and you didn't get back to me. I'm going to ask you again.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by driving? And if it's
Mm-hmm.
no one can be held accountable if they don't understand. Did you know that? That's a maxim of law. If you don't understand, you can't be held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they refuse to answer your question 3 times and you say, well, hold it, I still don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Powerful little word to insert there.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, okay, so this is, and I've already asked you once. This is the second time I've asked you, and I still don't understand what you mean by driving. It has multiple entries, multiple dictionaries. Are you insinuating that includes the concept of conducting commerce also, or are we just talking about the velocity at which my machine was traveling east?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you at with this? And if he says, well, and comes back with something else, now it's number 3. Hey, look, I gave you. You wouldn't say default; it'd be kind of awkward. But look,
For on the record, I've asked about this 3 times.
I've tendered an offer of performance. You've refused all 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I still don't understand what it is that you mean by this, and you've willfully refused to answer my question. So I've tendered an offer of performance. It looks to me like I'm done here today.
So when these rules are broken by either party, they have the right to make the determination after the default to where the proceeding goes after that.
Yeah, whoever prevails in the default, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They have to call the shot. They have to be their own referee.
Right.
Hey, we've done this 3 times.
Don't expect the other party to point that out for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done this 3 times. And
For the record, and then
Yeah.
you can...
how many times are we going to do this? Are we operating outside of due process today, Your Honor?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what we're doing? I mean, let me know what the rules are.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was going once, twice sold, and you wouldn't say that. This is super conversational. There's ways to polish this
Right.
in terms of, okay, now we're really here, but staring down someone who's skilled in this. And here's something else too, is most people are such dolts that go into that situation that they just want to plead their case. They just want to beg mercy and hope that the judge allows them to have something. That the judge themselves aren't polished or practiced
Mm-hmm.
at someone who really can step up and play the game at the Chris level or your level of that kind of skill. Man, just because, you know what I'm saying, as far as the kind of skill that he has in his world, in the martial arts, I'm just saying figuratively, verbally, if you walked into court that practiced, the judge isn't. I mean, these guys are mental doughboys because they don't ever they get practice, but not at that level.
Never challenged. They never actually get a chance to polish it.
And I'm speaking of,
Or it's more of a rarity.
more of a rarity.
Yeah.
More of a rarity. But they've been made aware of it. They're just not practiced.
Mm-hmm.
And practiced because it's not our fault. That, not to say that. I mean, people that go to court. And that's at the municipal level, the lower, the better you get as a judge, the higher up you start to move. You get bigger and bigger cases that, I guess, that you can handle, where due process is critical. And I'm convinced that these guys stick to it. That's what they're interested in sticking to, not defeating any particular type of defendant or plaintiff. Maybe there's a little bit of that to it, but once you understand this, all of a sudden you can see, which way it's going to go. You can just see that once someone's completely incompetent to speak in court, the judge he doesn't even tell you. And that's something else too, is once you've proven yourself to be mentally incompetent, the judge can't tell you that. Because who's more mentally incompetent than a nut or a guy that tries to have a conversation with him and knows it?
Right.
Right.
Don't argue with fools.
Right. Yeah. And so that's where the judge just says, okay, I've now acquired jurisdiction over this guy's affairs. I can speak for him. I have power of attorney. This guy is not mentally competent, and we're going down this path. And then there's a little bit of the nature of it, the shell of the game, which is the conversation kind of continues a little bit. You don't just see the hammer come down and he doesn't talk to you anymore. But once he's determined, yeah, I'm going to take over here, the rest of it's just sort of, sir, don't say any more, you're going to jail. That's I hear one more word in contempt of court. That's what gave rise to that, is that whoever he's talking to is mentally incompetent. Even if they are, the professor of something, of natural history, if you don't know this stuff, it doesn't matter how smart you are. So it's not that they're mentally incompetent from a mental health perspective. They're mentally incompetent from hey, I gave you 3 opportunities, we're not doing this all day. So anyway, that's what I don't know. I need more practice on this. I need a real life scenario to kind of go over the top of, to point out precisely.
But so we talked about the 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
We talked about making a legal determination. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about with this little mini lesson here today?
No, just that
Those were the kind of the main things.
There's 8 points within one, though.
Right, the 8 points, and if people want to look that up, there's a real nice representation of that on Bill Thornton's website.
Yeah, 1215.org.
Yeah.
/ I don't remember the
It's the 8 points of a notice, though.
Yeah,
of
yeah.
what elements of a notice.
Yeah. Yeah. And they have to be in there, and you can't trick your adversary. This is what happened. This is why it's an injury. Here are the damages, and you can't just stop there. Otherwise, you're just bitching.
Yeah.
This is what I need you to do. Here's
why you have a duty to do it.
Here's why you have a duty to do it. Because failure to state a claim upon which relief can be granted is that you never pointed out a duty for which there's a breach. So here's your duty, and then if you don't do that, here's how breach of duty comes out, and here's what I'll do. Ultimately, and then I don't know if I've gone over how much time is on that thing.
We're at 55. We have about 35 more minutes.
Okay, is this worthwhile? It's kind of irrelevant to talk about. Rights and duties are correlative, and the extent of one is the scope of the other. Have we talked about the mailman yet?
Let's talk about it.
Okay, do you know what a Greek chorus is? If I ask the Greek chorus, I'm asking you a question. I'm not really saying, hey, what is Nate's either specific opinion but what would the average person kind of reply? So when I ask you questions, I'm just sort of asking their Greek chorus. Okay.
How people would normally reply, potentially.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Just what you would anticipate the average reply to be. Okay, if I have a piece of land, a piece of property, and on one of the borders of my land, and it's private property, and I have notices staked out everywhere. Private property and no trespassing. And on the north border is a gravel road. And it's also posted. So right off the gravel, it goes right into my grass, no trespassing. Now, there's no physical barriers there.
Mm-hmm.
And I own it. I don't have any partners. It's just my land. Can you just walk on and trespass onto my land? Just whatever you want to do. Who cares? Just go on there, legally or lawfully.
No.
Yeah, and no, it's trespassing.
As long as it's posted.
Yeah, and it's posted. But I haven't given you enough information. What if you're a mailman? Can you just walk onto my land?
Well, there's an agreement that you have.
What if I get mail at the post office?
That's true. If you have it, but if you have a mailbox still on the property,
Well, what if I don't have service there?
if you don't,
I mean, just the fact that you have an office of postman, does that give you carte blanche to go anywhere on my land?
no.
Yeah, okay. And so I still haven't given you enough information. Now, what if I have 3 feet out away from the gravel road, I put a post box and I want service there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can you as a postman on duty, can you walk up and deliver the mail to that box?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a suggestion of where the mail goes.
It is, and so I put it there. I could have, if I didn't want you going that far, I should have put it somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And so rights and duties are correlative, and so the scope of one is the extent of the other, or the extent of one is the scope of the other. And so as much as you have a duty to deliver mail, you have to have an executable right to get that duty done.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that scenario so far, now that in your mind you're walking down the road every day and you're saying, well, I can trespass because I'm the mailman, I get to go up there. Does that, the thought process in your mind, could it get carried away enough to say, oh, I can walk all the way up to the front porch and into the kitchen and see if there's something I want to make a sandwich out of? Because it's okay that I trespass. No one else can go as far as I do. I can go onto the land. I can trespass. No one else can. I can do that. Because look, no one else can come in this 3 feet except me.
Mm-hmm.
And so the answer is no, because rights and duties are correlative. The extent of one is the scope of the other. So the extent of your duty is to go 3 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And so the right that you have is only 3 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where rights and duties are correlative come in. And so that takes probably several scenarios and a lot of time to roll around in your mind to have a pretty good grasp on. To now go back over and say, hey, what is it to state a claim upon which relief can be granted? Because in there are duties. And you have to understand how rights and duties are relate to each other. And that's what a judge has to know. When just because he's got somebody bitching and squawking over here
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that the other guy owes him something.
Mm-hmm.
And so not all injuries are owed a damage.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I was reading in this contract book, and I have so many, and I lost where it is in the page, but there was a story, there was a case study of a guy that had dug down deep into his land and was draining the water out. And the guy that had land right next to him, and it was uphill, his well went dry.
Mm-hmm.
Because the guy downhill drained it all.
Mm-hmm.
And so the guy uphill sued him. And so ultimately what happened is, the guy downhill, we've determined it. We looked into it. He's the one that caused the injury. There was no other reason that the water table dropped. There wasn't any, there wasn't a washout somewhere that,
Mm-hmm.
it was that guy that did it.
Mm-hmm.
2, it was an injury. That guy, that's an injury to this guy.
Mm-hmm.
But the bottom line is, the guy that dug the deep well that was on the lower elevation land, he didn't have a duty not to do
That's
it.
what I was going to say, yeah.
And so therefore he didn't owe the guy damages.
Mm-hmm.
He caused an injury.
Right, if you don't have a duty not to do it,
Yep.
then you're not responsible
You
for
got
it.
it.
Right?
And so that's why someone can't come into court and say, this guy caused me an injury and so he's got to pay me. Because the judge might say, yeah, he might have caused you an injury. I don't know that he owes you anything yet. We need to know more.
Mm-hmm.
And that is rights and duties. We got to get down into that.
Uh-huh.
And so it takes a little bit of practice to be able to, when it comes to the due process in 1, 2, 3, when you have those wheels spinning in your mind, you know how to set up whoever it is that you're dealing with communicating to them. You have a duty to this, and you better be right. And so that's what puts them in breach. You have to establish that there's a clear-cut duty, and some of that you can do by agreement. Now, ultimately, even if back then, this was probably in the 1800s, if that guy did a great notice, 1, 2, 3, did all his own private process and went and sued him, as a plaintiff, we always hear the plaintiff always wins. A judge can say, hey, listen, all this adds up, but there's no duty, there's no breach here. I can't award anything where there's no breach. So you better be realistic when you're writing your notices. I mean, you can't just claim someone's in breach. You better know what it is to be in breach of duty, and be realistic about it. But and so much of the commercial stuff we're dealing with, that breach is so huge that it's non-issue, right? I mean, the banks and stuff are so far out of breach of duty, it's not even.
I'm starting to realize how essential this is for all of us to know, because if these rules are being imposed on us, and that's how they're controlling us, or we're allowing them to control us because they've based these presumptions of due process, and it has to go through in a certain way. And if we're knowledgeable about that, then we gain our power back.
Oh, you gain it all back.
Yeah.
All of it. And that's what comes down to that point of taking responsibility. And once you know how to do this, all of a sudden no one's doing anything to you.
Right.
You allowed it to happen.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the more people that you can't just say take responsibility, but not really know what that means. Man, talk about that, is to tell someone to be careful. Like you tell a little kid, 6 years old, to be careful. It doesn't mean anything to them.
Fall over and wipe out the next step.
Right. And I think also you hear a lot about in the alternative type of information, people are saying we got to take full responsibility in order to be sovereign. And I would say, I don't think a lot of people know what that means. Talk about the tree in the shadow. I have this idea of, look, you have to take full responsibility. And all I can do is use those words. Someone else listening to me doesn't know what idea it is that I'm really trying to communicate on taking responsibility. What does that mean?
And like how that might apply to so many different facets of their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they will recreate taking responsibility. They'll recreate that image in their mind only based on their experience, their life experience. But if this is not their life experience, they won't recreate the image that I'm trying to present.
Right.
So that's I think once people are when someone's fully aware that they can't know what the other person means fully and completely and readily just based on what words they're using, that they need to ask, well, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? Or to question their own ability to recreate that thought. I think most people are so, and I'm going to use this word fairly loosely because I don't mean it real maliciously, but are so arrogant that when someone speaks, they just know what it means.
Right.
So one of the things that pops into my mind is there's a speech by John F. Kennedy called "The President and the Press," and he's kind of speaking colorably. And he's kind of talking about communism. Also, you can read into it conspiracy stuff. And so without really being able to question, hey, what do you mean by this and what do you mean by that? It's really open to interpretation, kind of like song lyrics. People can debate all day long about what a lyric means, but you don't know until you talk to the guy that wrote it. What ideas were you conveying when you wrote this? And most people aren't aware of that, hey, maybe there's something here I'm missing. They just think, I know what he means. Yeah, I'm John Doe. Of course I am. So, I don't know. I guess I kind of hit the end of my momentum on.
Are there any other crucial trip-up points that are You know, I mean, these are major things to know, even though they seem minor.
Yeah.
But you got to know if you're entering into a contract at all rise,
Yeah.
then you need to know that. And the thing about, I'm here as Dane Jacobson, and that's crucial. One little word, as,
Yeah.
to maintain your standing of representing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that the little phrase that I like to use to kind of set up how to view something is like there's you're either a king or a slave. There's no in between. You're either a master or a servant. And so when you look, it takes time and practice to be able to look through those kind of scenarios through the lens of a king, how he sees it. No one orders him around. No one calls the shots. No one dresses him down. No one questions him. And at the same time, there's no excuses. And so by him having no excuses means that if he fails somehow in doing something, you cannot blame anybody else for doing it. It's just your fault. And so it elevates the
Responsibility.
and the discernment and maybe the backbone, the diligence that you're gonna have when you're in there. Hold it. What does that mean? I can't fail here. You know, I can't go. Well, I guess they got me. You know, and I don't mean king in a super arrogant way either. I mean, when you had a man that would, you know, leave Morocco on a sailing ship and he owns a thing and he's going to say in the year 800 and he's going to go over to the southern shore of Italy. Man, there's no cops. It's a pretty wild. You know, if someone can defeat you, they will. And there's a maxim of law that says, "Let he who would be deceived be deceived." And another way of what that's really saying is it's no one else's job to step in and say, "Hey, hold it. I don't think Dane really knows what's going on here." You know, in a trade situation, it's kind of like, "Oh man, this guy's getting taken. There's nothing I can do about it." And so when you're aware of that, you know, concept of, you know, it's up to no one else to figure this stuff out. That is the revelation or the realization that you have in your mind for being educated, because most people say no one ever told me. Well, whose job is it? You're not curious. You know, you're playing video games, sitting on your ass watching TV, whatever. You didn't go out and you don't question and you don't ask, then that's your own laziness and it's your own fault. And that's where that concept of taking responsibility, I think, comes from, is the education level, is that it's no one's job to teach you. When you're in high school and they're lying to you, it's your own fault if you believe it. So that's kind of the conviction that once you have that, once you know that, hey, it's nobody's job to teach me. You know, you can't just sit back and take in videos like Winston's and Sam Davis and Brandon Adams and think that they're doing anything other than indicating to you what's in their brain. You have to see if you can find your path,
Right.
and confirm the same knowledge
Right.
by researching. And the only way you get there is by questioning. What's this? What's that? What does this mean? What does that mean? How could that be true? And it comes down to, you know, logic and word definitions, and that's what kind of got me boiled back down to basics of thinking things through from the most fundamental level. Is, man, there's no way I can rely on a source to be just true, accurate, and correct. Once I came to that realization, you know, I have to think this through for myself. Probably put me on a path of maybe a little too much tediousness. I mean, I probably know more than I need to.
You got the dictionary right next to your bed.
There's no such thing as the dictionary.
Or you've got a dictionary right next to your
This
bed.
guy's got more than A.
I have 40.
40, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for like, it's the middle of the night and you go, oh, that word could have meant something else, and you wake up and look it up.
Yeah. Mostly as I come across a word, and wow, what does that mean? I don't know, I got a bunch open right now, but subject was one of them. Subject sometimes can be, you know, just the thing that we're talking about, but it's also sub meaning under. Something being subjected to the force of something else. It's under the force of, a British subject is someone who's under the authority of. And you know what? That once countries got big enough, there is no difference between a country and a home. Where if someone has a home and they have certain rules within the place, hey, you got to take your shoes off, and everybody's got to be out of here by 8 o'clock. Those kind of things. You wouldn't say to someone in their own private home, "There's no law against that." Yeah, there isn't. But you're going to get the fuck out of my place at 8 o'clock. That's right there is the difference between statute and law. And when you're in under someone else's thumb, because you're either on their land, and that's part of the problem with the UK is I think the Crown has claimed all the land. I don't know that for sure. Or you've just signed up through adhesion contracts and you've submitted yourself to them. You're now figuratively in their home. Okay. Going by our rules now.
So are those laws that they made, or are those statutes?
Statutes, yeah.
Is there statutes?
Yeah. Laws just the maxims. Or just, a law is thou shalt not steal. That's a law. Anything statutes, acts, codes, ordinances, all that stuff is statutory in nature. It takes consent. But most people don't know where that consent lies. They think, at each individual time that we're discussing it, I either have to consent to it or not. I don't consent right now. Once you've joined the crowd, once you're a member of that society, that's where you agree to it. You can't be a member of the society and then refute all the rules as it doesn't suit
So
you.
what's the process then? They first create an act to run it by everyone?
No. Or I guess I don't know.
So
what
does
you
it
mean.
go act, statute, law?
No, statutes. You mean in terms of how powerful
How
something?
something becomes a law? Because it has to be made into a law for it to be a law, right?
No, law never goes away, even if it's not written down. Because ultimately, law will come down to logic and reason, like natural law, gravity. Gravity doesn't go away if we take it out.
Logic. Just think logic.
Yeah. And then everything within the statutory world is just the made-up nonsense. Hey, from now on, we're not going to go more than 35 miles an hour down this road. It's just declared. That's statutory. And just makes, and that can be outside of law. Give you an example. If you go to work for a corporation that's heavily involved in intellectual property, and they now have to teach you about their insider secrets in order for you to function. Maybe you're a chemist or you're a woodworker, or there's some way that they laminate wood with glue to make a superior type of plywood. You can't go quit and work somewhere else after signing a non-disclosure agreement and say there's freedom of speech. Go look at the Constitution. I have freedom of speech. I can say whatever I want.
Yeah, but you already contracted
You contracted out of law. And you limited yourself to that little mini statute. And so that's what the statutory stuff is that the law is a full plane. It's just a completely different conceptual reality that statutes are made out of. But
Yeah.
And it's almost like synonymous to...
It's almost like the Federal Reserve notes are statutes. Aren't they?
No.
Private
Because-
contract,
Yeah.
Well, I guess by you spending it you're also agreeing to that contract that this is $1.
Yeah.
So I guess it is a
There's
statute to begin with.
There's
right?
presumptions that go along with that. Yeah. That's probably more along the lines of quasi-contract. Quasi-contracts have a lot less assent and consent, and there's one other word. Within the meeting of the minds, consideration. There's a lot less consideration in quasi-contracts, but at the same time, when looking at the scenario, and we need to have a tiebreaker, we need to figure something out here. There's presumptions that go along with it. Yeah, you wanted to use them, we're just going to presume you knew what you were doing. We're going to presume you knew there was a contract, whether or not there was one. You acted as if, so... Yeah, there's quasi-contracts, simple contracts, and...
Unspoken contract.
Well, that's still a simple
Yeah.
or quasi. There's another one too. I got
Not that you want to do anything.
and
but,
that's what I want to really fine tune on. That is look at here's all the different types of contracts.
Okay.
Because money executes a contract. In order to understand money, you have to understand contracts. The fact that people say money is used as a medium of exchange is such a bullshit backwater issue just to keep people from really understanding the full nature of money. Money is used to execute a contract. I'll give you a car if you give me those dollars, okay? And when the dollars go through, the contract was executed. But if a dollar is only a measuring tool, I'll give you 5 inches, okay? And then you give somebody a piece of paper that says 5 inches on it. It's not 5 inches. It just says that it can be redeemed for that amount of 5 inches of silver somewhere, or $5 of property somewhere. The property has to be exchanged along with the paper. So, until property is exchanged both directions, it never gets executed. It never gets completed, and that's why the United States always has an interest when you go to pay your taxes with or a mortgage with Federal Reserve notes. The United States had to borrow those Federal Reserve notes into existence, and so they get them out there, and then you use them and you pay for something, and so yeah, you're off the hook. But because this thing was borrowed into existence, it's not the actual property. The property never got paid for. It never closed the contract.
So whose property is it while it's borrowed?
It's hollow. It's empty. There might be a holder in due course, but it's not redeemable for any property of substance for the face value of what it's saying. It's kind of like using a.
If it's
But
borrowed
what do you
without
mean?
consent, which is what it is, it's borrowed without consent.
Yeah,
right?
consent is given
And
rights
so
when you accept.
what does that do to the
You
whole
accepted
situation?
it. If you accepted it, there's the consent. Just by the
Okay.
fact that you accepted them, you consented.
Okay.
You might not have known. Full disclosure is different than consent. We're done?
10 minutes.
Okay.
What about consenting if you're hungry?
I don't understand.
People will consent to anything if they're hungry.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have an opinion when you're hungry. So that's basically,
yeah.
they're trying to crush us down basically by telling us, oh, the economy's screwed and we're sorry about all this but the bottom line is we're suffering because of that.
Yeah?
And so where was I going with that?
I don't know. Maybe there's a maximum of, I don't know if I'll pull it out exactly right, but something done under necessity was not done under free will.
Exactly, that's where I was going with that.
Yeah.
And if our choices are taken away because it becomes a necessity to eat, now I need to use this dollar
Yeah.
to go buy a loaf of bread.
Yeah. So if
I consented to the dollar because I needed to live.
Yeah.
You guys set up this system, I'm not going to let myself die.
Yeah.
And if I had to get the bread this way, then I did it. I did what I had to do.
Yeah.
So, yes, we have consented by being a part of the system and spending the dollar here.
Yeah.
But we were hungry. You know what I mean? Give
Yeah.
me another dollar that's a better tool
Yeah, but
to
now
trade with,
Now
and
you're
I'll
asking
use
for
that
a
one.
privilege. And so if you're asking for a privilege, you're down into that parents patre situation where you're not your own man on making
Right,
that
and
decision.
then when you're honorable, you make up your own new system and say, you know what? I'm not going. Your dollar's not
Or you
worth
make a
anything. And
counteroffer.
my counteroffer is to the rest of the public that says,
Why-
you know
why
what?
not take
Silver is
Canadian
the best
dollars?
way to trade here,
Sure.
and we're going to start trading with silver. And if all of you agree, then we don't have to be trading there what they say is worth something.
Yeah. Well, so if I was a judge listening to that necessity thing, I would say, okay, did you make a counteroffer? When someone offered you Federal Reserve notes, what counteroffer did you make? And if you didn't, that you accepted it. Sorry. And so if you would have said, hey, listen, I want to get paid in silver. I want to get paid in property, and you didn't do it. And that's at the point in time when you had options and you didn't know to take them.
Mm-hmm.
No, it all goes back to you again
Okay.
until you know enough.
Okay.
Back to taking responsibility, which that's why when someone says I have to take responsibility, they're gonna, when that's the first governing thought before any of the other ones, that compels them to think, okay, now they're offering me Federal Reserve notes, What other options do I have? Let me think this through here for a minute. Wait a minute, you're offering me these green papers. I don't want that. I want property, so you're not giving me property.
But we can still use them in exchange for whatever.
Sure.
Food, we can still go take them and get food.
Yeah.
You know, Dean was talking about this. Is like he was saying, he didn't like it when people were talking about how it's not backed by any substance. It doesn't mean anything. It's like, really? Didn't you go buy groceries
Yeah,
with it?
absolutely.
So I mean, you know, it's still functional to go get property with.
Yep. Only in the bigger circles, I kind of see that there's micro and macro exchanges. In those micro exchanges, I don't care about lack of property and lack of backing either. I think it's just bitching. It's just kicking sand.
Right.
It's just that in bigger exchanges, when you're doing business directly with the U.S. government, that's where it does open up a little bit different scenario, especially in court cases.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now property does need to be backed in if you want to execute the contract completely. Otherwise, the
because
file
you're getting
stays open.
closer. You're getting closer to the fraud.
Yeah.
And when we're in the grocery store, they don't care where the notes came from, just that they agree that this is $1 and you do.
Yeah.
But as you get closer to the actual Federal Reserve, which just up and printed it out of thin air after the gold standard or whatever, right? Then it's time to ask questions. Is that what you're saying?
No, not exactly. There's two systems how currency gets put out there. One is it's backed by us and our labor, and the other is the U.S. government borrows it into existence. So there's two streams of currency introduction.
Yeah, that's like basically this is like a whole nother lesson.
Yeah.
That is a whole nother segment.
Oh, for sure.
We kind of just got off talking about it.
Yeah. And so for the smaller stuff, who cares? It doesn't matter. But when you want to get rid of a contract, when you want to take control of it, now we do got to back it by property, and that's what A for V does. When you want to selectively target those transactions and say, hey, I want that thing to go away. You know, a criminal case or IRS issue or a mortgage. You know, I don't want anybody else still having their mitts attached to this thing. And that's usually something that has a substantial title or an account to it, and that's, you know, candy bars and groceries don't have titles, so it's lost in the ether when you use a debt note, and that's why it doesn't matter. Anywhere you're using where titles or accounts stay open, that's where it matters to apply your property to it, so that you're the only one that has an interest in it, if that's what you want.